the bottle slipped from my hand and hit the marble with a sharp crack. Champagne scattered across the floor, mixing with shards that caught the light like glittering mistakes. For a moment, the room was still, except for the soft hum of jazz from the speakers and the faint buzz of the phone in my hand. On the screen, my brother Ethan smiled beside our parents, all of them holding glasses under a banner that read, "Congratulations, Vice President Pierce Holdings." 24 people. Every seat at their table is full. Every seat at mine is empty. The restaurant around me looked beautiful, almost too perfect to feel real. Cream leather booths, polished wood, soft lighting over each table I had dreamed about since culinary school. I had spent $180,000 turning a vacant space into this. My savings. A small business loan, and every ounce of faith I had left. I'd planned this night for months, certain my family would show up. The only sound now was the slow drip of champagne sliding toward the corner of the room. I scrolled again, watching familiar faces laugh, raise glasses, pass around a cake I didn't bake. The reflection of the screen flickered across the empty bar. They hadn't forgotten my grand opening. The invitation sat unopened in my mother's purse. The truth came quietly and cold, settling deeper than anger. They didn't forget. They chose. And that choice told me exactly what I was worth to them. I was 33 when I finally admitted I didn't want to inherit my father's empire. Robert Pierce built Pierce Holdings from the ground up. 23 properties across 3 states, each one a testament to his control. In our family, control wasn't just a skill, it was a virtue. My father didn't believe in luck, or passion, or art. He believed in numbers that added up and children who didn't talk back. My brother Ethan learned early that loyalty to his vision was the fastest way to his approval. I learned that silence was expected, even when it tasted like shame. Growing up, our dinner table felt more like a boardroom than a family gathering. My father's conversations were balance sheets and mergers, not laughter or stories. My mother smiled politely, passing the potatoes while asking about quarterly projections. I was the one in the kitchen, roasting chicken and glazing vegetables, half listening as deals replaced connection. I cooked because it made them happy. But deep down, I knew my food was the only part of me they ever accepted. They loved my food, just not my fire. When I told my father I wanted to open a restaurant, he called it a hobby, something I would outgrow once I understood the value of stability. Stability, in his language, meant obedience. Every dollar in our house came with strings attached, and love was measured by usefulness. In his world, hierarchy kept peace. In mine, it killed the possibility. I realized too late that generational wealth can feel like a golden leash. I didn't want to inherit his empire if it meant surrendering my voice. So I walked away with nothing but a dream, convinced that one day I could build something real, something mine, without needing his permission to breathe. That afternoon, I started cooking before the sun went down. The kitchen smelled like truffle and rosemary. The same scent that used to fill our house on holidays. Every dish had a name behind it. Sea bass with preserved lemon for my mother, bourbon-glazed ribs for Ethan, and chocolate soufflé for my aunt, who always asked for seconds. The tables were set with silver napkin rings, candles flickering against crystal glasses, each one waiting for faces that never came. I let the playlist run, songs from our road trips and birthdays, my voice humming along to memories that suddenly felt foreign. As the hours passed, the food cooled and the music lost its warmth. I walked between the empty tables, straightening napkins that didn't need fixing, hoping someone might walk through the door just to prove me wrong. But the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rhythm of rain against the windows. When I finally looked at my phone, I saw Ethan's post, their laughter spilling from every frame. My invitation peeking out of my mother's purse, unopened. The message was clear. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen to be somewhere else. I stood behind the counter and opened my reservation system, scrolling to the Pierce family discount code I had created months ago. My finger hovered for a moment before pressing delete. The screen went blank, and in that silence, something inside me did too. But under that stillness, a small part of me started to breathe again. I sat at the bar that night, the restaurant still half lit, my phone resting beside an untouched glass of wine. My hands didn't shake as I typed a message to our family group. Effective immediately, Pierce & Co. is closed to family. No reservations. No exceptions. I pressed send and watched the screen fill with notifications. Calls came in one after another, names flashing like old debts being collected. I let them ring. The silence between each vibration felt like oxygen. An hour later, someone knocked on the side door. Ethan stood there in his party suit, the smell of beer and smoke clinging to him. In his hands was a plastic container with a half-eaten cake. He smiled like it meant peace, but his words carried something else. Dad says this was just a soft opening. He wants to invest. I looked at the cake and then at him, my voice even. You're late, and I don't serve leftovers. His smile faded, the kind that cracks when it meets resistance. I closed the door before he could answer. That night, I changed every lock in the restaurant and my apartment. The sound of the keys turning felt final, like the click of a safe door closing on something priceless. I realized loyalty is a currency, and mine had been undervalued for years. Boundaries, I decided, are the best kind of investment. They don't pay in approval, but in peace. And peace is worth more than any inheritance. The next morning, I taped a small, handwritten sign to the glass door. Due to overwhelming support, Pierce & Co. will now serve by reservation only, even if we share DNA. I meant it as a quiet boundary, not a statement. By evening, someone had taken a picture. Overnight, it spread across social media, passed between strangers who understood what it meant to draw a line. When I opened the restaurant the next day, a couple from Seattle stood waiting outside. They said they had canceled another reservation to eat here. Their kindness felt unreal, like sunlight through a window I didn't know was still open. The weekend that followed broke every record, $15,000 in revenue. Online followers up by 6,000. Articles calling me the chef who turned silence into power. The phone never stopped ringing, this time from people who wanted a table, not my submission. I moved between the kitchen and the dining room, half dazed, half certain that the universe was returning what I had refused to beg for. Late that night, I stood by the window as the last guests left. Their laughter lingered in the air, soft and clean, not like the empty noise of my family's approval. The city lights reflected off the glass, mixing with the faint gold of candle flames behind me. I thought about how long I had chased acceptance that never came. All it took was a single act of silence to fill every seat. Self-respect, I realized, has its own economy. It pays in peace, and peace never goes out of business. The backlash started quietly. At first it was a single review on Yelp that called my food cold and the service arrogant. Then 2 more appeared within an hour, repeating the same phrases as if copied from a script. By the end of the day, there were 8. None of the names matched my reservation list. The wording was too familiar, too careful, the kind of cruelty that comes from people who know how to hide behind manners. I reread each line until the meaning became clear. This wasn't random. It was family. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. They're planning something. Be careful. The words made my chest tighten, not from fear, but from recognition. It fit the pattern, the quiet sabotage that always followed Any moment, I tried to stand on my own. I called my lawyer, then a journalist who had written about my restaurant weeks earlier. She came by after closing, her notebook open before I could even explain. We pulled records, checked timestamps, and traced the reviews. Every post came from an IP address inside Pierce Holdings headquarters. 2 days later, the story broke. The article read, "Heir versus Heir: How a Daughter's Dream Challenged a Dynasty." The report included screenshots, legal correspondence, and even Ethan's text. Within 24 hours, Pierce Holdings' stock fell 4.6%. I watched the numbers drop on the news ticker and felt something rare. Not triumph, just balance. The restaurant filled again that week. People wanted to eat, to talk, to be part of something honest. Local reporters covered the story as a lesson in dignity, not drama. I stayed silent through all of it, letting the truth work on its own timeline. My father once told me silence was weakness. Now it had cost him more than my obedience ever could. Some people build empires, others build peace. I was finally learning which one lasts longer. Claire showed up after closing, her coat still damp from the rain. The dining room lights were low, chairs stacked on tables, the scent of roasted garlic still hanging in the air. She looked nervous, her voice barely steady as she said she needed 5 minutes. I poured her coffee and waited. She slid her phone across the table, screen glowing with a string of messages. Project Reset. That was the name of the group chat. My father, my mother, Ethan, and a few cousins. Their plan was simple: discredit me, flood review sites, make it impossible for the restaurant to survive without their help. Each message came with timestamps, screenshots, and even a voice note of my father saying, "Let her burn out. She'll crawl back." I listened without speaking. The words didn't sting anymore. I had already lived through worse. Claire's eyes filled with guilt. She said she couldn't marry into a family that treated someone like that. I told her she didn't owe me anything, but she shook her head and whispered that she needed to make it right. I looked at the phone again, then at her. The evidence was enough to destroy them, but I felt no desire to do it myself. Revenge was too small for what I wanted. When she stood to leave, I thanked her quietly. The air between us felt clean, like something heavy had finally lifted. Truth had done its work. I didn't need to fight anymore. I was free from their story, and that was all the closure I needed. Claire's post went live at dawn. Screenshots, voice notes, and names filled every feed before breakfast. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. People I hadn't heard from in years sent messages of support. Former coworkers, old teachers, and even one of my culinary mentors wrote that integrity always finds its audience. The hashtag #StandWithOlivia spread like wildfire, not because of drama, but because people recognized something familiar in the story. Everyone had been underestimated by someone who mistook kindness for weakness. That week, my landlord stopped by the restaurant with a fresh contract. He said 5 more years, same rent. He wanted stability, and he said I represented it. Cuisine Monthly ran a feature calling me Chef of the Year, describing Pierce & Co. as the restaurant that turned scandal into standard. I didn't celebrate with champagne or speeches. I simply worked another shift, plating each dish with the same focus I had when no one was watching. Late one night, I stood outside under the quiet hum of city lights and thought about my father's warnings. He used to say dirt always finds its way to the surface. Maybe he was right. But when your name stands for something clean, dirt can't stick. A year later, an envelope arrived in the mail, cream-colored with gold lettering that caught the light. It was an invitation to Ethan's engagement dinner. I read it once, then fed it into the shredder beside my desk. The sound was soft, final, almost peaceful. That same evening, I signed the final paperwork for a $1.2 million investment. My second restaurant would open downtown, in a restored brick building with open beams and a rooftop herb garden. I called it the table because everyone who sat there would have earned their place, not inherited it. When I hired my team, I chose differently this time. Single parents rebuilding from nothing, veterans searching for a new purpose, young cooks whose dreams had been dismissed the way mine once was. Watching them work, I saw the kind of family money could never buy. Family isn't who you inherit, it's who you invest in. That was the only wealth worth keeping. The dinner rush had just ended when a woman walked in, holding her daughter's hand. The girl couldn't have been more than 10, her eyes wide as she looked around the kitchen. The mother explained that her daughter wanted to be a chef, but thought she wasn't good enough. I smiled and motioned for them to come closer. The counters were dusted with flour, the air warm with the scent of bread and herbs. I took a small piece of dough and placed it in the girl's hands. "The kitchen doesn't care who believes in you," I said softly. "It only cares what you create." She pressed her fingers into the dough, her small smile spreading like sunrise. Around us, my staff laughed and cleaned, their voices blending with the hum of the ovens. The restaurant glowed with quiet life, every table a reminder of how far I had come. I looked at the girl, at her mother, at the people who chose to build something with me instead of taking it apart. The real inheritance, I thought, isn't approval. It's courage. And as I watched the girl knead the dough with steady hands, I knew I had already passed it on. This was the family I was meant to find.